Back in my Smoothie B-roll, I got this shot from inside the glass that y'all have been asking about. It was for real the most complicated shot in the entire video, because the glass, the camera motion, and a bunch of distortion effects all happened in editing. I'm dedicating this tutorial to this specific shot, but I'm also working on a full editing breakdown of the Smoothie B-roll since I didn't make one when I was just starting out YouTube. Alright, so to make it look like we're falling into the glass, I combined two shots. A still image of the glass from below, and a shot of pouring the smoothie. Filming was the easy part since I have a water-resistant phone, but honestly, until I finished editing, I had no idea if I could pull it off. But I knew that if I failed, I'd learn just as much as if I didn't, so that pushed me forward to try and make what I had in my head a reality. So I started with the background shot of the smoothie. Let's jump into Adobe After Effects. The original shot was still, so I added a zoom out animation. I did this using keyframes, which are like points that allow you to animate any property over time. So at the beginning, I added a keyframe with the scale up, and at the end, I added a keyframe with the scale down. Next, I wanted to distort the image to look like we're moving backwards, not just zooming out. This is obviously much better to do in camera because I could have just moved my phone down, which is something I regret. By leaving everything until the edit, I made my work more complicated. I added a fisheye effect and animated how strong the warp was to mimic the perspective of moving down. This means bulging out at the beginning and warping in at the end. Combined with the zooming out, I think it looked fairly convincing. So that's the background shot, and next I put the glass on top of it. When you combine different shots into one, it's called a composite. So with the smoothie underneath, I took the glass and made a mask. Then I inverted that mask, so it's basically like cutting a hole at the rim of the glass. Next, I did the same thing I did with the smoothie, which is animate the scale and warp of the glass. This is only the scale changing. This is the fisheye warp effect. And this is both effects combined. So that is the foundation of this shot, but as you can tell, it doesn't look real yet. So the next thing I did was change the blending mode of the glass layer. Blending mode is basically how a layer interacts with the layers below it. Like, can you see through it, and does the stuff below it affect how it looks or how bright it is? The one that made the glass the most clear was vivid light. Now most of the big work is done, and the rest is cleaning up everything and making it look good. The left side of the glass looked too bright, so I added another mask and then applied a Lumetri color effect to that mask, turning down the brightness to match the background. I also wanted the glass to look more real, so I added a ripple effect and radial blur. I covered up the big dark smudge on the left, which I think is my hand, with another mask of just a freeze frame of that gray color. I make sure to feather almost every mask to smooth out that edge. So far it's looking pretty good except for the splat at the end, which doesn't look real at all. I felt like the splat was too sudden, so I added a freeze frame right before the smoothie lands and decided to make my own splat. I took one of the frames that is filled with smoothie, so after the splat, and masked it in a ring to be the reflection of the smoothie droplet in the glass. I animated the mask using keyframes. Then for the actual droplet itself, I created another mask and expanded it to eventually fill the frame. Altogether, those 6 layers made up this shot. It took me a full day to edit this because I was also learning how to use After Effects in the process. I remember feeling like this probably wasn't going to work and I would have to just cut it out of the video. I definitely struggle with believing in my ability to take what's in my head and make it a reality. Like, I always doubt whether a video ends up looking and feeling the same way it did as an idea. But I found that the more I try to do what I can't do, the better I get at bridging that gap between expectation and reality. Overall, I think this was a very ambitious shot for me to attempt, and I was very surprised that it actually worked, but I'm glad that I was able to put it in the B-roll sequence. I've got the full editing breakdown for the Smoothie B-roll coming up, So catch that in the next week. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe, and thank you for watching.